Welcome to an audiobook entitled Parish Management and Operations, The Buck Stops Here, narrated by Catholic author Michael Brinda. We hope you enjoy the segment and find it useful in your ministerial work.
Chapter 58, The PMO Communications Challenge. What is our biggest communications challenge in PMO? Our biggest challenge is not the science but the art. And the art is having the good sense to wisely choose magisterially correct content to communicate from the tsunami of available material already published in books, articles, or the internet, and then send it in a timely manner to precisely who needs it via the preferred communications channel that person wishes to receive it. However, what does fully engage mean to the receiver, specifically in a PMO communications context? To fully engage the receiver is really a euphemism for this starting point in the receiver's mind. Dude, don't bother me with anything I don't want to read or view. Fine, but how do you accomplish knowing that? Imperfectly to start, and then you refine your message. What you don't do is give up and become satisfied with any current brokenness or deficiencies in your PMO communications. Specifically, this is how you start. In PMO, in other words, any employee, PMO employee or volunteer, in PMO we have the job of literally and figuratively becoming a micro search engine working on behalf of every life profile in our community, the young, old, active, lapsed, healthy, sick, married, divorced, homosexual, etc., member of our community. We do this proactively because it is our communications and outreach duty in PMO, not because we are naively waiting to be asked questions by people who have already quit listening to us. If you are waiting for apathetic or lapsed parishioners to help themselves in the spiritual awakening realm, much less ask the church they already quit on for anything, you are going to be waiting for a long time. Specifically, in PMO, like the Hound of Heaven, it is your duty to digitally source solid and magisterially accurate Catholic material relevant and helpful to the multifaceted lives of our active and lapsed parishioners across all levels of knowledge and interest. We do this for them and on their behalf. We do not wait for them to awake from their sleepy mental fog and finally get it. Why? Because anyone who thinks their communication is confined to the available page space of the parish bulletin or parish website visitors needs to advance their mental clock forward several decades. We do not even ask, much less expect or rely upon, the lost sheep within our geographic area to unilaterally seek out and find the information they need to know to grow deeper in their faith and closer to Christ through the parish bulletin or parish website. If a parishioner or lost sheep does take that initiative, is a self-starter, and independent of anything we might send him or her in PMO, takes it upon himself to locate information pertaining to his faith walk, that is just a bonus. But we are not going to implicitly demand by PMO a mission of its outreach and evangelization duty that anyone, without our extending and helping hand, will spontaneously combust and become proactively on fire in their dormant faith. If an individual is not that far along in his or her faith walk, what then? It is our duty in PMO to meet them where they are, not where we wish they were. Therefore, it is our duty in PMO to proactively communicate what is helpful to every person in our geographic area that God has, or has not yet, placed in our path. This is the art of PMO communications, and this is what it means to help our brothers and sisters in the digital era. as we are never going back to the non-digital, analog, slow, and inflexible area of communications. So as a church, we better get on board with this much more proactive communications principle right quick. What parishioners do with whatever we send them is on them, but we will be proactively digitally communicating as precisely and in as fine a granularity as possible in helpful content, whatever we discern or discover in the digital information aeropolis that will help current or lapsed parishioners in their faith walk. The communications science concerns the mechanics of how the information is sent. A technically competent professional covers this base. But the art of applying the communications science is in discerning what to send, why to send it, and who to send it to. However, we must now note, you can't digitally communicate to parishioners, the family and friends of your parishioners, or the lapsed and lost, unless and until you know, number one, who they are in the first place. Number two, their social media or email account contact information. Number three, precisely what germane topics or subjects they want to know more about. And how do you acquire the above information? The old-fashioned way. Like the hound of heaven, you unceasingly and relentlessly and creatively and at every opportunity invite people to provide this personal contact information through every means available to you. For the sake of clarity, allow me to put achieving the above, clearly not an optional activity, in two contexts. Number one, if you ever had to make payroll, you know one truth. Missing payroll is not an option. Make payroll or shut down. Therefore, if you context acquiring the digital arena personal contact information you need in the same manner you would if you had to make payroll, in other words, you must collect the required contact information or shut down, you will be amazed at how this attitude colors your actions and efforts to collect the necessary contact information. All of a sudden, obstacles become something that by definition are simply things that must be overcome to reach my objective, because failure is not an option. Number two, we strive to emulate what Jesus would do in our lives, which in this case translates to our PMO activities in sending useful communications to current and lapsed parishioners, well beyond the boilerplate parish potluck dinner reminders, notifications, etc. In particular, our example comes from Jesus on the cross when he said, "I thirst." Well, in PMO, we thirst too. Thirst for what? We thirst to serve the spiritual needs of every soul, but we can't serve them unless we know who they are and what they need, and we will not know what most of them need until we invite them to share with us how we might help them in a PMO communications context. As such, we must collect their digital contact information. But what is the invitation trap here? First, a quote by Charlene Lee, author. Twitter is not a technology, it's a conversation, and it's happening with or without you. End quote. So, what is the invitation trap here? Recall the old attendance roll call joke, raise your hand if you are not here. The same applies here. How so? As the PMO administrator responsible for communications, you want to better serve the temporal and spiritual needs of parishioners by inviting them to provide your office with the information requested in points 1, 2, and 3 mentioned above. So you place your request for this information in the parish bulletin. You know, that same parish bulletin the audience you are seeking to reach already does not bother to read, in part because this audience simply does not prefer to read via paper, but mostly because they are not in church in the first place to even pick up the parish bulletin. Oh. How can someone read a parish bulletin he does not have? Clearly, you are not going to be nearly as effective as you could be, even when communicating with active parishioners solely via the parish bulletin. But how do you communicate with parishioners who have already quit on their faith? Be kind, be patient, and show love. Fundamentally, that's how. The church has lost millions of people for a variety of reasons, but she did not lose millions of people overnight. Translation? Those who left can return back through the same always open doors of the church via the same free will that took them out. Your job in PMO is not to focus on how many people you reach. Your job is to focus on how you reach people. If you do your part correctly, you know the Holy Spirit will do His part, one soul at a time. But in our hurry, hurry, faster society, how long does one soul at a time take? Wrong question. In PMO, we are concerned with always doing the right thing in a superior manner. That's it. People are always looking for that single magic bullet, whatever the topic of discussion, which will totally change everything, instant success. But there is no magic bullet in reaching lost souls. It is better to think in terms of incremental gains. 4 singles equals a home run. It is easy to become discouraged if you do not accept or understand this point. Take for example the math of starting with a penny and doubling the amount every day for a month. Relatively speaking, you have nothing to show for your first 2 weeks of your efforts. It sounds discouraging. But on day 31, you will have a staggering $21,474,836.46. Clearly, your patience is paramount when building PMO. Gains will likely take months, not days or weeks. The problem? The problem is, and has been for far too long, we accept the attrition of parishioners without a parish-centric, PMO-led communications counter-strategy to bring each parishioner back by overcoming the reasons for their apathy and antipathy, not to mention better serve the composite temporal and spiritual needs of the parishioners who have not yet left but might leave tomorrow. At the same time, we must acknowledge the avalanche of garbage accessible, not just on TV, but also, for example, via the ubiquitous smartphone we carry every waking moment in our pocket or purse. Therefore, we must answer, originating in PMO, what are your proactively delivered sound Catholic sources of targeted, timely, relevant information to counter the avalanche of readily available secular garbage? When I am in the privacy of my mind, if not vocally, wondering what is wrong with moving in with my boyfriend or girlfriend, or what is wrong with in vitro fertilization when we desperately want a child, or why homosexuals can't be married in the church, note I have mostly long ago since stopped caring what the church has to say about any of those things, except for an interesting truth. The prayers and petitions offered on my behalf by a loving family member, friend, or even a total stranger that have by the grace of God pried open an ever so small window in my soul willing to listen, if only someone would proactively send me something doctrinally correct to read or listen to that would answer my questions. However, since I am no longer seeking communication with the church in general or engaging my parish in particular, indeed, in my mind, I no longer even belong to a parish or a church, how does PMO communicate with me when they don't know who I am, where I am, or what is on my mind? As follows. Number 1, Rome wasn't built in a day. Translation, be persistent, be patient, and never quit. See where you are in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years, of relentlessly applying this PMO communication strategy day after day. Number 2, If you are looking here for a solution, a perfect solution to this conundrum of needing to communicate but not knowing precisely who to communicate with or what topic the receivers are most interested in right now, guess what? Again, there is no magic bullet solution. There is simply a solution as follows. What did we already establish as our objective in PMO in general and PMO Communications specifically? To help people with their faith walk by leading people to Christ. And what is our specific challenge in PMO Communications? To provide useful and timely information to current or lapsed parishioners in our geographic area. We need to know who to reach, their social media contact information, and what topics they want to know more about. The low-hanging fruit in this challenge are current and active parishioners. If someone is currently active in faith and in their faith and parish, just ask him or her for their contact information. These are not hard people to find, nor usually reluctant to provide the details you are seeking. The more difficult challenge, those who have quit on their faith or who were not catechized to begin with and no longer participate in the parish, which brings us all back here. If you are not here, raise your hand. Point 3, how do you communicate with people you do not know? As follows. Whenever you do not know precisely what to do, you do everything you can imagine that is legal, ethical, and moral. Even the ridiculous-sounding things, especially the ridiculous-sounding things. This brings us back to what is the point of our efforts in PMO via the Communications Marketing Board, the CMB. We are trying to reach a critical mass. Not every marketing idea succeeds, but every marketing idea that you never try is a 100% failure 100% of the time. For example, when I was in the education business, we had a staff meeting, and one of the topics of discussion was directing first-time student customers from the front door entrance of our large training facility to locate their specific classroom. Our problem? When students reached the T-junction at the end of a hallway, they didn't know if they should turn left or turn right to find their classroom. Standard directional signage placed here for whatever reason was not always effective. People wandered the hallways trying to locate their classroom. What to do? How do we capture the attention of a lost, in a hurry, directionally disoriented, late for class new student customer and give him or her clear directions to their classroom? Somebody in the meeting said we should paint a scarecrow on the wall, and of course everyone burst out laughing, except for me. That tongue-in-cheek scarecrow suggestion was actually a eureka moment. I happened to know a superior artist. I knew him at all because I offered free computer skills training to people on probation, and this young man was on probation. What happened next? 1 month later, what was on the wall at the troublesome T-junction in the hallway? A larger-than-life-size, perfect full-color rendering of the scarecrow from The Wizard of Oz, both arms outstretched and pointing, with the yellow brick road and Emerald City in the background. At the end of each arm were painted the classroom numbers in each direction. Communication problem solved. How? By painting of a scarecrow on the wall? Technically, yes, but in reality, not close. You must first be willing to think outside the proverbial box to solve your communications challenges. The point? Nobody, and I mean nobody, knows precisely in advance what will work and will not work in marketing and communications strategies. As such, nobody knows how to reach, both mentally and electronically, all those people in your parish's geographic area who have quit on their faith in God. But I know this: inside the box, narrow, timid, self-defeating, negative thinking will never allow you to paint a metaphorical Wizard of Oz scarecrow on your PMO Communications wall. Hidebound, risk-averse thinkers, unwilling or unable, to allow for such ideas to be tried should not hold positions of authority when it comes to marketing. Another communications example? Do you know what is on 24/7 display in front of the Holy Apostles College and Seminary facility in Cromwell, Connecticut, on the grass frontage area facing the road that runs past the campus? Full-size grave markers and crosses. There is also a large sign that all passers-by can read explaining that each cross represents 1 million aborted babies since abortion was legalized in the United States by the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision. Skip for now focusing on the courage it took to approve building this display. My point is about the outside-the-box thinking that was required to generate this visual communications display in the first place.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.